Linet is his first manager. He was in 1973 and was also Wicked Lester's manager. So he took Gene Paul, kind of brought him into what Kiss became, and he's going to tell you about it. How you doing? Welcome, Lou.
I'm fine, but your microphone is very muted and distorted.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you, but it's very distorted. It was clearer before.
Should I talk?
When I was just talking with you and Lisa.
That's the microphone up there.
Now, the voices in the back are nice and clear.
How's that? We love you, Lou!
Much better.
Those mics are pretty sensitive in the cameras.
Yeah.
Okay. Can you hear me now, Lou?
Yes, I can hear you.
Thank you, Lou! All right, we're cheering for you. Okay, so tell us a little bit about how you became...
Give it up for Lou Linet.
All right, tell us how you started with Wicked Lester. How did you get involved with that?
Well, first of all, let me say it's great to see you all, and thank you for coming out tonight. And the only regret that I have is that my good friend Sid Benjamin can't be with us tonight. He was a wonderful guy, and I'll tell you about him later, but he was a wonderful friend. It was in 1972, and I had come to New York to manage some new groups. One was called J.F. Murphy and Free Flowing Salt, which later became J.F. Murphy and Salt. And I had come from Philadelphia, where I was producing the Philadelphia Folk Festival, and came to New York to live in New York, and managed some new. By the way, I'm hearing some chirping. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah. Sounds fine.
Good. Anyway, so I'm working with these groups, and I get a call one night from Ron Johnson, who I knew as a publisher. And I didn't realize he was a recording engineer as well at Electric Lady, Jimi Hendrix's studio. And I used to see Jimi Hendrix quite frequently at Steve Paul's The Scene down in the 50s, back in the late 60s, in the 50s on the street. And he was working with Eddie Kramer, who later produced Kiss, the Kiss Alive album. And they set up Electric Lady Studios. I had to work with Kramer with J.F. Murphy and Salt for Elektra Records. So I get a call one night from Ron Johnson. He says, Lou, I've got this new group here, 5-piece pop rock group, and I'm doing some demos with them, but they need management. Would you be interested? And I said, sure, Ron, I'd love to. He says, on down. So I finished my dinner. I was living on West 69th in Central Park West. And I jumped on the 8th Avenue subway. I guess it's AA. And I took a ride down to Electric Lady and went in, and he introduced me to the group. He introduced me to the piano player and guitar player and rhythm guitar player by the name of Stan Eisen, and the bass player by the name of Gene Klein, and a couple of the other guys, and they played some tunes for me. And to be honest with you, they weren't very good. I didn't care for them. So I thanked everybody very much for inviting me, and I said, it's not for me. I left. Well, I thought that would be the end of it. I start getting calls from Gene and from Stan. Lou, please come and hear us again. We really want you to be our manager. Please come and help us. I said, well, guys, it's not really for me. Then I get a call from Ron. He says, Lou, we just hired a new guitar player by the name of Ronnie Jack, who's a big, well-known guitar player in the area. And the band sounds different. They've got new material. Why don't you come down and take another listen? I said, okay. So I went down, listened to it again, and this time they were quite good. So I said, fellas, what a change. Really, really nice. I would be happy to work with you as your manager. So I signed them. And so I signed them. Now, and by the way, just it's funny. All these years later, here are Gene Klein's and Stanley Eisen's management contracts right here, signed by them. So back in early '72. So we start to work together. They want the name of the group to be Wicked Lester. So then Ron tells me that he's been talking with Don Ellis at Epic Records, talk about a deal. And I said, well, would you like me to take over? Now that I'm managing the band, I'd be happy to take over. He said, yes. So I went to see Don Ellis, the head of Epic Records, and I negotiated with him and with my lawyer, Dan Snadowski, who later became the owner of The Bottom Line. He founded The Bottom Line, my lawyer, but not at that time. It was a year later. But in '72, I took Wicked Lester to Stanley, signed him up with him, and Stanley and I went to Epic and we negotiated a very nice 5-year contract for Wicked Lester with Epic Records. So then, the band is working and working and working with Ron, and they're developing material. We got a nice advance from Epic Records at the time, good deal of money, distributed it to the members. And Ron finally finishes the album. And I gotta tell you, I thought it was quite good. It was a pop rock album. That's what Wicked Lester was. Folk pop rock. And I thought it was quite good. I heard a couple of singles. So we're all done the album. We're all excited to get this album done and released. And we called Don Ellis and say, we're ready to show you the album. He says, great, come up to the office. So we all come up to the office, the whole band, and Ron, and he brings the tape with him. Everything was on tape then. And he brings the tape up, and I can, as I'm talking to you, I'm sitting in the office to Don Ellis's right, in front of me, the band, and Ron Johnson, and he walks over to the left here and puts the tape on the tape player. The album starts, and we're all listening and listening and listening, and the album finishes the last tune. And Don says, everybody, I'm sorry to tell you, I do not like it. I am not going to release it. We couldn't believe it. Can you imagine this? A year's Ron working with the group for months putting this together, and Ron John and Don Ellis says, no way, no release, I hate it. Well, I gotta tell you, here we are, we were all excited to be in the office there, and here we are walking out into the hallway, and everybody's heads are down, we don't know what to say. I say to the guys, fellas, I don't know what to say except I'll have to find you a new label, because the album is excellent. So we go down and we leave Epic Records. I'm ready to start looking for a new label when I get a call one last thing. I said to myself, before I can look for a new label, I got to get them off of Epic. So I called Don the next day and I said, Don, you're a friend of mine, we've worked together. Would you do me a personal favor? Release the group from their contract, but let them keep the advance money. He said, okay. So I went up to the office and I got the release from Epic Records. Now I'm ready to shop them to another label. And I get a call the very next night, and Gene is on the phone. He says, Lou, can Stan and I come in and talk to you tonight at your apartment where my office was on West 69th Street? I had my office in my apartment. He says, could we come over? We have an idea. I said, sure, guys, of course. So a couple hours later, they show up at my door. I open the door, they walk in. As I'm talking to you, I'm sitting in my chair in my living room. They're sitting where you are, right across the room. And they said, Lou, here's what we think. We don't think Wicked Lester is going to happen. We're not happy with the sound. We, the two of us, want to leave Wicked Lester. Let them be. Let them get a couple other players if they want. We want to leave and form our own group. We want to form not a 5-piece pop rock group. we want to do a straight ahead, hard rock, 4-piece band. 2 guitars, bass, and drums. We would like you to please stay with us as our manager and help us create a new band. I said, fellas, you are excellent musicians. You're great guys. You're hard workers. Absolutely. I am with you. We are together. Yes. And I thought that would be the end of the meeting. We'll start to form a new band. Before they leave, Gene says to me, you know, Lou, I hate to say this, but I think my last name, Klein, is too Jewish for rock and roll. I think I need a more kind of an English name, and I like the name of that famous actress, Jean Simmons. So, but I spell my name Gene, Eugene. She says, I'd like to call myself Simmons, Gene Simmons instead of Klein. I said, okay, Gene Simmons. I said, great. Then Stanley said, and Lou, I think Eisen is a little too Jewish for rock and roll too. So what I'd like to do is change my name to take my first name, Stanley, Stan, make it my last name, and I am such a big fan of Paul McCartney's. I want to call myself Paul. So I want to call myself Paul Stanley. I said, great. So I'm thinking to myself, here I have 2 guys from Wicked Lester, Gene Klein and Stan Eisen, walk into my apartment, and here they are walking out as Gene Simmons and Paul Stanley, ready to form a brand new group. Right? Okay. So I have to get them some rehearsal space. There was a young lady who lived where I am now in Los Angeles, living in California with the head of MGM Records as his girlfriend, and J.F. Murphy and Salt, before they were on Elektra, were on MGM. And so when J.F. Murphy and Salt played the Fillmore East, she came in from California to do promotion for the Fillmore East dates for J.F. Murphy. Her name was Alice West. She was beautiful, smart, and just absolutely charming. She told me about a month later that she had broken up with Mike Curb, that's who it was, Mike Curb of MGM Records, and she was moving back to New Jersey where she was born, the New York area. So I said, Alice, I would love it if you would come and work with me. I need an assistant. Would you consider that? She said yes. So she started working with me, and we hit it off as good friends. We dated a little bit. We spent time together. She was a fabulous girl, and she helped me with the new group. I said, Alice, we have to find rehearsal space. She said, I have a friend on West 23rd Street who has an antique store, and above it he has an open second floor. Maybe I could get him to either give it to us or rent it to us at a cheap rate. I said, that would be wonderful. So she talked to her friend, and by the way, Alice, you may not know the name, but she went on to become a big TV producer, producing a lot of legal and crime dramas in the 1990s and early 2000s. Very, very well known, Alice West. But at that time, she was just getting started back in New York. So we got the room. So I brought the guys over, and we set up this little rehearsal space above the shop, and they started to work into audition musicians. The first one we needed to audition would be, or hire, would be a drummer. So we would have a rhythm section, bass, drums, and then a rhythm guitar. So we auditioned a number of people, and I've read stories that they knew Peter Criss from before, but I've never known that to be the case. Maybe they did, maybe they didn't. All I know was they called and said, Lou, we've answered an ad in the paper, and there's this guy by the name of Peter Criss coming up to audition tonight, after we auditioned all these drummers. Now, the other drummers that we auditioned all looked very funky. They had long hair, they had beards, like you guys. Long hair and beards. and they look like musicians, and they bring their drums up, and the drums were very worn and scratched, and you could tell that they had been used a lot, but they weren't right for the group. So they say to me, this guy, Peter Criscula, nice Italian boy from Brooklyn, Peter Criscula, is coming up to audition tonight. I say, great. So the rings, we let him in, and in comes this clean-looking, absolutely dapper guy, short hair, no beard, and he brings in these drums that look like they've never been played. Sparkling clean, brand new, all the drum heads are all clean, not a mark on them. And I'm saying to myself, oy vey, this guy's from a bar mitzvah band. Thinking, how's he ever gonna play rock and roll? So, but it was an audition. So he comes in, and what does that mean? The young lady there with the, what did you mean?
Who's that?
This lady.
Which one?
Anyway, so he comes in, and he sets up his drums. And can you hear me all right?
Yeah.
Good. Okay. A little background noise there in the microphones. But anyway, so he comes in, he sets up these brand new, beautiful drums, and I'm thinking, oh, this is no way can this happen with this guy. They start to play, and oh my God, he was terrific. He had that feel, he had the technique. He was absolutely excellent. I thought to myself, this is the guy. I would never have dreamed it looking at him, but this is the guy. So he finishes the audition and packs up, and they say, we'll let you know, thank you. And he says to me, Lou, can I give you a lift uptown? I said, Peter, that would be wonderful. Where do you live? He says, I live in Queens. I'm going over the 59th Street Bridge. I'll give you a lift up to your apartment. I said, wonderful. So I help him bring his drums down to his little car. I think it was a little Chevy Vega, something like that. A little 70 or 69 Vega, I forget. I seem to remember it. And we pack the drums up, and I get in, he starts to drive, and all of a sudden this expression on his face, I thought he was going to break into tears. I said, Peter, what's going on? He says, Lou, I have to tell you something. This is my last chance. I'm married, I've made a commitment to my wife, we're going to have some children. I've been working in these bands, these little bar bands for years now. I haven't gotten anywhere. I have to be honest with you. This is it. If I don't get hired in this band, or if the band doesn't make it, I've made a commitment to my family to give up music, sell my drums, and get a regular job. And he was practically in tears. I said something I should never have said to him as a manager, not as a member of the band, but as a manager. I should never have said, Peter, don't worry about a thing. But I couldn't help myself making that kind of a commitment. I just couldn't, because I felt so strongly for the way he felt and how good he was. So he dropped me off, and I said to myself, well, I'm home now. It's going to take Gene and Paul another 20 minutes to get home to their places in Queens. So I'll call them as soon as they get home. I waited about 20 minutes, and I called. It was either Gene or Paul. And I said, what did you think of Peter? And they said to me, he was excellent. We liked him very much. I said, I just want to give you my opinion as your manager, as a person listening to the three of you. I really believe he's the guy. I hope you'll hire him. Well, that was the end of the conversation. 2 or 3 days later, he was hired. And I was thrilled to see the three of them together. So the three of them started to rehearse. And then we said, now we've got to find a guitar player. And so we auditioned many guitar players. And finally, this guy comes in by the name of Paul Fraley. And Paul starts to play this very unusual, interesting style, different from all the others. When he gets done, he leaves for a moment, and the guys say to me, "What do you think?" I said, "I think he sounds excellent. What do you think?" They say, "We think he's the right guy for the group." I said, "Yes, I agree with you too." So they called him back in, and they said, "Paul, we'd like to hire you for the group. Only one problem. We have another Paul in the group already, Paul Stanley. So you need to change your name." We asked him, "Do you have a nickname?" He said, "Well, my friends call me Ace." So we said, "Okay, that'll be it. Ace Frehley." And Peter said, "And my name, Chris Kula, it's too Italian for rock and roll. I'm going to get rid of the Kula and just call myself Chris." So I said, "Okay, we've got Gene Simmons, Paul Stanley, Ace Frehley, and Peter Chris. Fantastic." They start to work material, and I can't work them yet. They're just building up material. They need a couple of sets at least to work. So they're beginning to learn songs and do songs. And I notice after about a week or two, they start wearing a little makeup. Little glam rock makeup, New York Dolls, Alice Cooper, little eye makeup, little lips, little just kind of girly makeup, but glam rock makeup. So I think, that's interesting. They're kind of following in that trend. Okay. So they finally get a couple of sets together after a month or so or two of working. Well, at that time, I was bringing people in to see them, and the problem was that nobody liked them. Everybody who came to see them did not like them. And I got to tell you, what you know as KISS did not exist at all then. It was just 4 guys with a couple of sets of material. They didn't have Beth. They didn't have Rock and Roll All Night. They didn't have some of the other tunes. And they were kind of weak, and no image of any sort, just the 4 guys. So I tried to get them some work, a little showcase at the Coventry and a couple other things, freebies, and nobody liked them. And I would bring reviewers from the Village Voice, from the New York Times, to see them, and they were not liked at all. I got nowhere with them. I figured I have to get them work somewhere to start. So who can I call? So I thought, my other band, J.F. Murphy and Salt, has worked this place out on the island that the guys from Brooklyn called the Daisy. And I said, let me call this guy Sid Benjamin and see if he'll do me a favor. And so I called Sid on the phone, and I said, "Sid, you playing Jack Murphy in the band, and they've been doing well. I have a big favor to ask. I've got a new group called," oh, by the way, let me go one step back. While we were rehearsing with the 4 of them, we decided it was time to pick a name for the group. Because Wicked Lester was another band now, Paul and Gene were forming this new band with Peter and Ace, and we needed a name. So we sat down one day right after rehearsal, and we began to put names out. The hugs, the love, the lips, the this, the that, all this kind of stuff. And somebody comes up with the name Kisses. And I think it was Paul. And, I love that sign, by the way. And Paul says, "How about Kiss?" And I say, "Kiss? The Kiss? Kisses?" He says, no. How about just the name Kiss? So we looked around the room, and as I'm talking to you, I see Gene over here. I see Paul over here. I see the other guys over here. And I'm looking around, and everybody says, "Yeah, that sounds like a nice name. Okay, we'll call ourselves Kiss." And that is how the name came. It was just a bunch of suggestions from the musicians, and the name Kiss came about. Now, they're getting their material together, and I need the work. So I call Sid, and I ask Sid, "Would you do me a big favor? I have a new band. They call themselves Kiss. They're a hard rock 4-piece group. would you be kind enough to give them some work, some paid work? Will be their first paid work. He says, Lou, for you, your friend, absolutely. And so I said, all right, let's book a date. And today's date, 45 years ago, was the first day. Yeah. Just to give you a little humor here, that you'll get a kick out of this. Sid Benson ran the Daisy at night, but during the day he was a paper hanger. He did interior decorating, and I was the head of the tenants committee in my apartment house, and we needed paper hanging. We needed the walls being papered and so forth. So I hired Sid to do the paper work, the interior work in our apartment house, and he would come in the morning and work on the apartment house all day, and then at 3 or 4 o'clock leave and open the Daisy, and then I would close my little office at 4 o'clock, drive out to Amityville, and be with Sid and the bands at night. So Sid was a very, very good friend. We worked together. He did decorating work for me in the apartment. And then it was such a great honor and pleasure to come out where you folks are, I guess you're next door, to come out and work at the Daisy with the groups. And that is how KISS got started at the Daisy. Do I have time to tell you one other thing?
Yes.
Yeah. Who said no? No, let me ask Billy or Lisa, do I have a moment?
Yes, absolutely. But
Yeah.
let me tell you something real quick, Lou.
I can't hear you.
Wait, hold on, I gotta come up with
Can't hear Lisa? Wow.
You can't hear me.
Now I can hear you.
We actually have an original employee of the Daisy here tonight.
Oh, well, great. Let me ask you guys. Let me ask all you guys in the audience. Were any of you at the Daisy on March the 9th in '73?
We have one back there. Can you see him?
My God. It's great to see you again.
Do you remember anything, Kevin?
Stand, come up closer. It's dark back there. He's coming up.
Do you remember anything of that evening, Kevin?
It's very funny. Don't tell the New York State Liquor Authority. At the time that Sid hired me to work at the Daisy, I was 17 years old. And I used to work there days, mopping the floor, cleaning the place up, fixing broken chairs, and all kinds of odds and ends. And I was a drummer myself. I was a drummer on my way up with my own rock band. I love to tell you about Murphy and Salt, by the way.
Well, thank you.
Oh, I sang a million times. I always wanted to put the candles back. Great thing.
All right, let me tell you something. I don't know if you know this, but did you all hear what he said?
Yes.
No, I hear it.
All right, he said that he just told me how he worked for Sid, but he said he was a big fan of J.F. Murphy and Salt. Were any of you familiar with J.F. Murphy and Salt? You guys? I see. He may not know it, this gentleman, but Jack Murphy, can you hear me? Yeah, okay. But Jack Murphy of J.F. Murphy and Salt left, the band broke up after some years, but he went on to become a Broadway composer. And do you remember the Broadway show called The Civil War about 10 years ago? It was a big hit. It won a Tony for certain things. He composed lyrics. He's been writing lyrics for Broadway shows for quite some years now.
Yeah, they were great. It was a great band.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I probably somewhere in my collection, I may still have their first album.
Wonderful. Almost home.
Yeah. So anyway, on that day that KISS was down there that night, I came into work in the afternoon. I had a key to the club. I let myself in. I'm waxing the floor, and all of a sudden, as you said, Sid came down. You know, probably from a day of hanging wallpaper, and he would just talk with me a little bit. He was a great guy to work for. So he's talking to me. He says to me, "Look, you know, any money you find outside the bar itself, out on the floor and everything, just keep it, put it in your pocket, you know, if you're waxing the floor, you find money, whatever, just keep it." He says, "Anything behind the bar," he goes, "give it to me," you know. And so he says, "You know, a friend of mine is bringing some band down here from Queens tonight." He says, "Some kind of really weird guys with makeup and costumes and everything." He said, I don't know. He says, "You know," he says, "usually we have bands a little more normal than that." He says, "But," he says, "I hear there's a lot of money behind these guys, you know?" So I came back myself that night. And sure enough, you know, met Kiss, you know, I stuck around and watched them play for a while. And I said to myself, well, you know, this is interesting. I go, but, you know, as you said, I said, Alice Cooper did this years ago, and, later I said to myself, I should have just shut my mouth and invested in those guys. I'd probably be well. They went on to make a ton of money. Yeah, it was fun. I saw them a bunch of times after that, Daisy, or several times at least.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. Well, you know, they went on to make a lot of money. Says, I have to share something with all you guys. Ever since then, I switched businesses some years later, and I became a national sales trainer in the automotive industry. That's a whole other story. But I talk about in my lectures now, and have been for years, the value of persistence in anything you do. And the example that I use when I do my sales training is Kiss. How they persisted through the toughest times to become successful. In the Los Angeles Times, every Sunday, there is a column called How I Made It. And in 2010, I'm going to hold this up. Maybe you can see it. It says, can you see that?
Raise it.
It says, his Kiss and Tell story, How I Made It, Paul Stanley. And just to quote a little bit, he says, early days, Kiss structurally worked to give the impression that it was successful. The band intentionally limited its New York appearances even though we had no gigs, so that fans would think the group was on tour. The members saved money by setting up their stage equipment, no roadies, setting up the stage equipment themselves, but did so hours before the so that concert goers would not see them do it. Talk about commitment. For the same reason, they delivered flyers for upcoming engagements in the middle of the night to people's visors on parking lots, so no one would see them do it. Then he says, the band members largely ignored the scathing reviews Kiss regularly received from critics. And that's what they had to do. They had to ignore all the negativity that was being said so that they would continue what they were doing. And it was fascinating that I left the group shortly after launching them because they did not have this jacket costumes, they did not have the songs that they made popular. They were just the four guys. They weren't happening, and honestly, I didn't think that I could do for them what they maybe needed, but we had no concept of what they became. No one ever talked about it, that this is what we want to do. But Bill Aucoin, their manager, who took over from me, with my very, very closest friend Alan Miller and his partner Sean Delaney, took on the band after I had it and did a magnificent job. But it was during that time when Bill Aucoin got them a deal with Casablanca Records. He couldn't get them to Columbia or whatever. He had to go to Casablanca, a little new label that had no acts. This was going to be their first act. And he got them a deal, and they did 2 albums that flopped. over the next 2 years or 3 years became they were absolute failures.
60,000.
But he stuck with them, and Bill invested about $200,000 of his own money in them. Today that would be $1 million, but we're talking about 73. And during that time, those 2 years, is when they came up with the ideas for the characters, the costumes, the stage act, the tongue, the lights, the fire, and some new material. And they, sticking with it, did not let go, created the image and the Kiss that we all know today. And then when my friend Eddie Kramer produced Kiss Alive at the end of '76, they had begun to build a grassroots following, and that was the album that broke them worldwide. And what was so nice was that after we separated, we remained good friends. Gene and Paul and I would talk on the phone every couple of weeks. They would let me know where they were, where they were playing, what happened, what the results were, what stayed in touch. And then when they came back to New York for their first Madison Square Garden concert at the end of in the middle of the 70s, here's what they called me and said, "Lou, we're going to be at Madison Square Garden. We'd like to send you some tickets for you to come see us." I said, "I would love to, guys." And so they sent me tickets. And there was a little box that they had reserved. And in the box, myself and my girlfriend at the time, next to us, Sid Benjamin and his wife, and directly in front of us, Eddie Kramer and his girlfriend at the time. And the 6 of us sat there and saw their first appearance at Madison Square Garden. And I'm happy to say that we remained friends over the years. I'm very, very proud of that, because I was just thrilled with the success that they were having. They found the image, they found the act that they needed to do, but they struggled so hard. And then in 1978, here I am in California, I get a call. "Lou, this is Gene." I said, "Gene, how you doing? What's doing?" He says, "I have a solo album I just did." I said, "That's wonderful." He says, "I'd like to send you a copy as a gift." I said, "Fantastic." So he sent me the copy. Can you see this, everybody? Yeah, solo album. So he sends me this album, and I said, "Oh, I'm thrilled he sent me this album." So I look at the cover, I look inside, and I look on the back, and on the back here, he's got all these credits, thank you credits to people important in his career. And here I'm reading about all these big superstar musicians and superstars. I'm reading this list, and my God, I look down here, and there's Lou Linet among all the credits. I thought, oh my God, I am so honored that Gene felt that I was important enough in his career to give me a credit on his album. And so I called him and thanked him. And ever since then, I haven't seen Gene for a while, but I've been in touch with Paul a number of times, because they both live out here a couple of miles away from me here in Los Angeles. So we've been in touch over the years. Unfortunately, I haven't been able to be in touch with either Peter or Ace, because they left the group some years later, came back, left again, came back, left again. You all, I'm sure, know that whole thing. But it was such an honor and a pleasure to see them come up with that image and see the wonderful management team with them accomplish all of this success. Now, Billy, would you like me to tell them that last part about what Gene said?
You know what?
Let's actually take a couple of questions from the audience.
And then you tell me when. You tell me when.
Is there anybody who wants to ask a question? You can either come up, I'll give you the mic, or you can relay it to me and I'll tell Sid. Anybody?
You'll tell Lou.
Well, I'm sorry. Actually, while you're thinking of questions, do you know anything about, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Look it up.
Not into the mic.
Can you hear me right now?
Take the mic away.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Now I can hear you.
Do you remember anything about in 1976 CBS tried to remix the Wicked Lester album, release it, and kind of take advantage of the success Kiss was having? Were you notified at all about that?
I wasn't notified about it, but I heard about it. some friends told me, I wasn't notified by the group, but I did hear from some friends that there was some interest once the Kiss Alive broke, that CBS did want to reissue that album. Yes, I heard, and that I heard the group didn't want to do it, and that Casablanca bought the album so that it wouldn't be released because Kiss didn't want people to know that that's what the group Wicked Lester sounded like before Gene and Paul left. Yes.
I have a question. What was his first impression of Paul and Gene?
The question is, what was your first impression of Paul and Gene?
My first impression was that these guys, I don't want to sound corny here, but here was my first impression. They were totally committed, hardworking, they were sober, they didn't drink alcohol, they didn't smoke cigarettes, they didn't take any drugs of any sort. They were as straight as could be, as serious and committed and determined. I thought the world of them. I loved them dearly. And that's why when they came to my house that night after Wicked Lester lost, when the record wasn't going to come out, and that's why when they came to me and said, Lou, we want to form a new group, will you stay with us? I said, you bet, guys, because you guys are terrific.
All right, any last questions?
I got a question.
Yeah.
Ask him what he remembers of Bob Kulick's audition. Bob Kulick's audition.
Do you remember any of the other guitar players, like in particular Bob Kulick auditioned just before Ace did?
You know, I don't remember. I remember the name, but I can't picture, nor do I remember the sounds of the other players. Why do you mention that name?
He's gone on to he played on Gene's solo album and has done a lot of things with Kiss over the years. And right now, him and his brother Bruce Kulick, another former Kiss guitar player, have gotten together as a duo, and they've become very popular playing the old songs from solo albums and things.
I see. That's great.
And he's going to be on Long Island in May doing a convention here with us. Bob.
Wonderful. Yes. No, I don't. I honestly don't remember his audition.
Why was there so much money backing them in the beginning?
Why was there?
So much money backing them in the beginning.
Why do you think Bill Aucoin invested so much?
No, before Bill Aucoin.
Well, there wasn't much money.
He said there was much money back in the beginning.
No, there wasn't. They actually.
Oh, okay.
But I think more, to clarify that question, I think more, why do you think Bill Aucoin put that kind of money into Kiss? What did he really see in Kiss? What do you think at that point?
Well, at the very beginning when he saw them, I don't know except maybe their commitment. Bill Aucoin was a television producer. He was producing a show called Flipside. It was like a bandstand show. And maybe he saw visual values with this group, and maybe as he started with them in the very beginning, there was some talk about image and staging and so forth. And I think he was more attuned to the visual image than I was. I was more attuned simply to the music and the notes. And of course, I think that his investment in them came just about the time or shortly after the characters and costumes came to be. Because he took them on tour on his American Express card.
Any other questions?
I got one for you, Doug. So,
Why don't you just come over here?
so one of the things that Gene and Paul say in some of their books about the early days was that the Daisy allowed them to experiment a little because it wasn't the New York scene. Can you talk about the energy difference between the Daisy and other places they played?
Yeah. The energy difference. The New York scene was composed nightclubs that absolutely depended on the acts filling the rooms. The acts were paid very, very little, and they had to fill the rooms or they would never be hired because the rents were so high. You had clubs in New York at the time, like the Bottom Line, the Bitter End, the Cafe Wa, some of the village, what am I thinking of? The Village Gate. Some of these other clubs in Manhattan that needed, because of the expenses, needed acts that were very well known and that would draw a lot of people. There was a club called Kenny's Castaways. And I remember, and Pat Kenny was a good, do you remember that? I see people shaking their heads. Pat Kenny was a close friend of mine. I had acts appearing at his clubs when he was up on 86th Street or 84th Street on the east side. Then he moved to Bleecker Street. And the point was, and he made it known to me, he needed acts that filled the clubs. Whereas the places in Jersey, on Cleveland, etc., had lesser expenses, like the Daisy, and they could afford to bring bands that were beginning to happen in their formative stages. They could afford to do it. And I think that's one reason that Sid did it. And you know what? Sid also did it as a favor to me personally, for which I've always loved the But that's the difference. New York, the city, Manhattan, I'm trying to think of the other one on Fifth Avenue. What was that one down around 7th Avenue, 5th Avenue? I can't think of the second. Big club. But the point is, they would only hire groups that were well known and would fill the room.
Any other questions? Elliot.
Yeah.
You have another question?
Sure.
First of all, I just want to say thank you so much because, given that unfortunately Bill Coyne, Sean Delaney, etc. are not with us anymore, I mean, this is fascinating what you have to say. And
You know what you say. May I stop you right there? Thank you. I want to tell you something. Just for all of you to know, it's unfortunate what this gentleman just said. All of the original KISS crew have passed away. I'm the only one left. I hate to say it. Bill Coyne is gone. Sean Delaney is gone. Alan Miller's gone. Neil Bogart, Casablanca Records is gone. And their lawyer for 30 years, my best friend and lawyer, Stan Snadowski, died the year before last. So unfortunately, of the original crew, I'm just the only one left. And I wish that all these people were still around because they were wonderful people. Yes, sir, go ahead.
So I was just wondering, I don't know if you've ever done an interview like this because this is fascinating. So, I guess, was it a conscious decision on your part just not to really revisit the KISS part of your life, or would you do more of this, or would you write a book, anything like that?
Well, I would be happy to do these kinds of things. This is the first one exactly like this. I received an email from Lisa asking me. They thought I was
How did you find that? Yeah.
They thought I was a tour manager or a road manager of the group. She didn't realize that I was the personal manager of the group, but that was okay. But she emailed me and said, we're doing this anniversary. We understand you were connected. We know your name. And so I said, I would just love to. It would be an honor, especially to see all you guys. The fact is that I did do an interview, as a matter of fact, with one of the authors of one of the books about this. There have been a number written, and they've all called me for interviews. And one of them actually recorded the phone call, and I think it's on YouTube. This is from like 15 years ago.
Ken Sharp.
And it was for the book Nothing to Lose?
I forget. But I just recently learned that that's on YouTube. Somebody came to me and said, "There's one of your interviews is on." I listened to it on internet.
Well, I'm going to check it out, and thank you very much for doing this. It's really been a pleasure.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.
Anytime. Thank you.
All right, Lou. tell us, give us some closing thoughts, and then we'll say goodbye.
Wonderful. First of all, guys, I hope I've shared some information with you that you find fun and interesting about the group. And thank you for all being fans of the group. Thank you for all being fans of the group. And one of the reasons I say that is, can I just tell this little story in a couple minutes?
Yes.
Pardon me?
Absolutely.
In my sales training in the automotive industry, I go to dealerships and dealership groups around the country and teach hundreds of salespeople in the art of sales. What I learned through all of my years with the Philadelphia Folk Festival and then managing acts and selling record deals and publishing deals and personal appearance tours and so forth. And back after I finished with KISS, about 25 years went by, and I never said anything to anybody. It was just my background that I was aware of. I didn't brag about anything. I never said anything. Then the internet comes into being. And in the late 90s, I'm teaching a class at a dealership, and I say, are there any questions anybody has? And I think they're going to ask me about the sales technique. And a guy puts his hand from the back. He says, Lou, are you Lou Linet who worked with KISS? I said, what? Yes, how did you know? He says, I Googled you. I said, you what? I said, you mean you looked at me through funny glasses? He says, no, I Googled you online and your name came up and I wondered if you were the same one. I said, well, yes, and you should have seen everybody in the room. If they weren't paying attention before, they went like this. And I had everyone's eyes in the room. So they said, tell us. So I just told them a little story. I thought to myself, well, that's a once-in-a-lifetime thing. That'll never happen again. About 2 weeks later, it happened again. Somebody asked from the crowd. It happened then again. I finally said to myself, instead of just waiting or just kind of talking, is there something about KISS that I learned, that I saw, that I witnessed, that I could use to help all of the salespeople get their jobs? Is there some quality? So at the end of my lectures, when I teach the sales training, I have what's called the recipe to success, and all of the ingredients: focus, concentration, discipline, etc., etc. And the last quality that I always talk about is persistence. And I always tell salespeople, with each customer, always persist, don't give up. And I thought to myself, oh my God, if there was ever anything that I saw with KISS that I had never seen in my life, was the degree of persistence that they put in for those years from 73 to about 78, 77, 78. I never saw anything like it. Starving, without a dime to their name, working hard. They would tell me they'd go to a job, they'd get an opening act for Led Zeppelin or something. They get paid $500. Led Zeppelin's getting 50,000, 100,000. They're getting 500. What did they do with the 500 bucks? I don't know. Put it in their pockets? No. They would hire limousines. And they would have the limousines drop them off at the concert hall so that the patrons, the concert goers, would see them arriving in a limousine. This is how committed they were. They told me when they would call from that they would carry canned food and can openers in their guitar cases. That when they stay in a $10 a night motel, they'd all four sleep in 2 double beds and open the cans of food with the can openers so that they could afford to hire the limousine to take them to the job. That is the kind of sacrifice that they made. All right, now here's what Billy wants me to tell you. Where did this start? At the rehearsal one day, after they're working and did a couple of gigs, and the reviews were awful. as a manager, I had to share with them what was being said because we had to know what to do. Understand? It's my job, it's my duty to act confidence with my act. So here I'm reading this horrible review, and I said, I just have to, I'm sorry guys, but this is what, you have to know this so we know what we're doing going forward. And I read this review just like Paul Stanley talked about in that article. And guys, listen to this, you're not going to believe what I'm about to say. As I'm talking to you, I'm seeing Gene standing right here. And Gene says these words to me. He hasn't a penny in his pocket. He's living at home with his parents in Queens. We have no record deal yet. We have no record deal. We have no jobs, no income, and bad reviews. He looks at me and in all seriousness says, Lou, don't worry about a thing. We are going to be the biggest rock band in the world. I couldn't believe it. I'm hearing these words. I'm saying, what? Where does this come from? He was dead serious. Don't worry. All this stuff broke. No record deal, no work. And review. Don't worry about a thing. We are going to be the biggest rock band in the world. 10 years later, by 82, 83, 84, they were the biggest rock band in the world.
God bless them.
And I have shared that with every group of salespeople I have trained ever since. I've never forgotten that. Billy, what do you think?
That was great. Thank you so much for joining us. And let's have a big round of applause for Lou Linet. Have a good night, Lou.
See you again sometime. Enjoy. And Billy, play that music. Rock and roll all night.
Audience!